Good morning, everyone. Brett Simon here. So, anything happen where you live overnight? Anything? No. Well, we had a little bit of news. So there was an election in this country yesterday, and it seems like Donald Trump has won. I must admit, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed and sad that the country thinks that's a good idea, but it is what it is. He's the winner, and we got to deal with it. Actually, I think it's important first of all to explain some of the impacts to DV Lottery, and that's really my focus. That's what I want to talk about. But I am going to talk a little bit about what happened, why, and what I think has gone on. Let me just sort of recap that for you. Firstly, let me. Oh, by the way, for people that are asking questions in the chat, please just hold your questions right now. The intent of this video is not a normal live Q&A. I'm doing it live, but I want to sort of focus on topics that I know people will be asking about. If at the end, I have a little bit of time, then I'll take a few questions. But just for now, just hold your questions. There's no point in asking the questions, right? So this is the results as it stands right now, right? The results, we have a bit of an odd election process in this country. The results of individual state elections become the overall decision. And what Trump or any president has to do is achieve a number of over 270 or over of the electoral college. That's what they call this. So each of the states gets to vote. Each state has a certain number of electoral votes. For example, California has 54. Let's see, Iowa, for example, has 6. Right, so the number of electoral college votes that each state gets relates to the population in that state. Okay, so it's kind of a daft system. A lot of Americans like it. I think it's kind of stupid, but it is what it is. It's the system we've got. Normally, at this time after an election, we would be talking about the popular vote as well, because the popular vote is a straight comparison of the number of people that voted for one candidate versus the other candidate, right? And I was pretty certain that that Trump would lose the popular vote, but could possibly win the electoral college, just because of the way that the electoral system works in this country. The electoral college system kind of gears towards rural America, smaller states, etc., and those states overwhelmingly support Trump. And Republicans. So the electoral college system tends to favor the Republicans, whilst a popular vote, if that were important, that would tend to favor the Democrats. There are more Democrats and, should we say, left-leaning or left of center, at least, people in this country than there are Republicans. Kind of an odd situation because the Republicans end up running the country. And most of the people that live in this country, would not really agree with his politics. So, but something odd has happened, and I think this is important for us to understand. For me, it's a more accurate discussion of what's happened, not to say that Trump won, but that Harris lost. She lost the election, and I think this screenshot that I'm showing here just shows why. So you can see here that Trump has gained so far, and the process isn't entirely over, but so far he has 71.5 million votes in the popular election. He's won the election. He is going to be the next president. He's won the election, but he got 71 million votes. Harris has only got 66.6 million votes, right? If we go back and have a look at the same situation for Biden and Trump. Trump lost the election before with 74 million votes. So let's say he gets a couple million more votes in this election. He'll have roughly the same number of votes in 2024 as he had in 2020. But he lost in 2020, and that was because Biden had 81 million votes, right? which gave a much higher. You can see there's more blue on this map here. It gave Biden a number of states that Harris has now lost, particularly what is called here the blue wall, these stripy states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those three states essentially were an absolute must-do for Harris, and she's lost those states. But overall, I think it's very telling that if we look at the number of votes she's got, 66.6 million. Call that, maybe she ends up something like 68 or 69 million. She'll be sort of 13, 14 million votes less than Biden got, right? So Harris, for whatever reason, or let's say the Democrats, let's not blame Harris necessarily, but the Democrats have failed to vote for their candidate. And Trump has taken advantage of that. Trump has got the same or possibly less votes than he got before. The same people that liked Trump in 2016 generally like him in 2020 and have stayed loyal to him in 2024. It was enough for him to win this time, even though he lost dramatically in 2020. It's really odd that the Democrats failed to get out the vote. Now, is it because she's a woman? Possibly. There's an aspect of that. Is there some anger directed at the current administration, particularly Biden, for various things? The state of the economy as perceived, not as reality, but certainly as perceived. We went through some difficult economic times. Inflation was very high here, as it was in most countries around the world. But Americans have apparently blamed Biden for that, even though it was after the pandemic, and pretty predictable, frankly. One of the key things, though, is that Biden himself probably caused his party its own problems. When he ran as president in 2020, he said he knew he was already an old man. He said he would be a transitional president, meaning he should only have run for one term. He clearly had health issues, mental health issues, and frankly, the smart move would have been to made it clear earlier, much earlier than he did, that he wasn't going to seek re-election. That would have given the Democrats more time to come up with their best candidate. Would that have been Kamala Harris? Possibly not. But they would have come up with their best candidate. They would have had more time to figure out how they were going to run. And most critically, a different candidate wouldn't have been put into the position that Kamala Harris was, of being tied to the current administration and therefore having to either A, be disloyal to her boss, Biden, in saying that he did some things wrong, or B, say, I mean, she could either be loyal or she could say, yeah, he did a lot of things wrong. I'm going to change a lot of things. She was asked a question on a program called The View, which was a friendly environment for her. She was asked a question, is there anything you would have done different to the Biden years? And she gave a loyalty type question, type answer. She said, no, there's not much I would change. Bad answer, because a lot of Americans were looking for economic change at the very least. Whether the country needed it or not, what she should have answered was some things. Look, she could have said, I believe we did very well, but there's some things we could have done better. There's some things that we're going to change. There's going to be some tax breaks for the lower class. There's going to be some tighter controls on immigration. She could have done some things with that answer. She chose not to. I can't believe she hadn't been prepared for that answer. So they chose not to, and that, I think, was a very critical turning point. It sort of deflated her the momentum that she was going at that point, and I think it just took the wind out of the sails. There was a bit of an upturn in momentum for her in the last couple of weeks or so, but clearly wasn't enough. And if you can only get 66 million people to vote for you compared to the 81 that voted for Joe Biden, there's nothing you can do about that, right? It's too late. Game's over. I think a different candidate would have had a better chance. A different Democratic candidate could have been more overtly differentiating in the way that they spoke about the policy. They wouldn't have wanted to be negative towards Biden and Harris, because actually Biden and Harris have done pretty well. But they could have more easily laid out the differences and wouldn't have been held responsible for the similarities and for the administration. A common refrain, a common sort of point was, if Harris is going to make a difference to the country, why didn't she do it in the 3.5 years? Now, it's an idiotic thing to say. It shows a complete stupidity of how government works. The VP isn't in control of the country, but it does show the feeling that people have that Harris was connected to Biden. And if you're a poor old white guy in America and you want someone to blame, you've got Trump standing up saying, hey, blame all these immigrants and blame these Chinese people, blame these Muslims, blame the Mexicans, blame Haitians. He comes out with all that rhetoric. And if you're an old white guy in America, you probably think, well, that sounds better than what we got now, because I'm still poor. I'm still, and clearly things are not going well for me. That's how they think. Anyway, so it is what it is. That's the result. Now, let me talk in practical terms what will happen, because I think some of you won't understand, what will happen next, right? Trump will become the president on January the 20th of next year. He is not the president now. Right now he's referred to as the president-elect, meaning that there's a transitional phase that is supposed to happen between now and January the 20th. On January the 20th, he will assume power. He has no power until then, right? That's the first point I want to make, because people will probably be saying, oh my God, is the lottery going to be cancelled this week? No. He's not in power until January 20th. But what will happen? Well, I can tell you some of the sort of mind-numbingly funny things that will happen. Like all of those court cases that, where he has clearly done wrong, where he's clearly responsible for all sorts of wrongdoings, both criminal and civil. They're all going to go away. They'll just evaporate. Poof. Just go away. It'll be like it never happened, because he'll just pull the pull all the cases. The people in the January 6th rioters, many of those, I would say most, not all, but many of those will have their convictions quashed in some way. They'll be pardoned. They'll be taken out of prison. It's amazing, because there's some really serious crimes that were committed on January 6th. And I think there's about 9 people who are convicted of seditious conspiracy. But Trump can't admit that there was a conspiracy to commit sedition, which is overthrowing a government, by leaving those people in prison. So he's got to take those people out, I think. And those people are serving sentences of like 18, 20 years. So there's about 9 people who are like really happy this morning because they're going to get out. And these are some of the worst people America has to offer. So he's going to release a bunch of people. There are a lot of other people, J6s, who received stiff, harsh penalties, prison terms to send a message. Many of those would have already been paroled out, would have served their time and been let out. The ones that are left will be people that engaged in violence. And Trump's going to have a harder time pardoning people who did commit actual acts of violence. And there's going to be a lot of those. But he'll try. So that's going to happen too. That's going to be one of the funny things. Actually, I wrote a bunch of stuff this morning, just sort of capturing my thoughts. Where is that? Let's see. Let me just read that here. I don't want to blow the lead here. Law and order. Yeah, okay. So from a law and order point of view, unfortunately, there will be many people emboldened in their views. Some of their views I violently disagree with. But they will be emboldened by this win for Trump. They will be given permission, if you like, to be as awful as they want to be. I'm talking about people who are racist, of course, people who are just plain ignorant. Stupidity took a win yesterday. It's a big win for low IQ. There will be people like that who will feel emboldened, and so in everyday life, things will be just a little bit worse. It doesn't really affect you as immigrants specifically, and it won't really affect me, in all honesty. It won't affect the people I love, but things will be just a little bit worse, especially in some parts of the country, because a bunch of nutty people have been told that they're actually, normal, and they're not normal, but that's what they've been told. Economically, just before we get on to immigration, economically, I don't think anything terrible will happen. I am concerned that he'll implement a bunch of tariffs, but if he implements tariffs, they will quickly fail, and he will quickly reverse them, I think. Most of his thinking about tariff is like that of a 5-year-old. And he doesn't really understand that other countries can implement tariffs against us, and so there will be a reciprocal sort of battle for a while, and then those tariffs would be removed. His thinking about tariffs is that it will build up the economy in America. Of course, that won't happen overnight. In the short term, tariffs actually cost Americans money, so it's inflationary. But he thinks we're all going to start making products that we would normally have bought from China. Why he thinks Americans want to do, ridiculous, low-paid work that they are happy to do in poor countries, I don't know why he thinks that's going to be good for America, but there you go. That's apparently what they think is going to be a smart move. Personally, I think it's worth buying on the global market, and if something is available at a low price on the global market, made wherever it's made, then buy that and construct whatever you want to construct in America from that raw material or piece of an overall product that you need to put together. That makes products cheaper in America and allows us to focus on real innovation and high-paying jobs, and jobs that will actually set our economy up. I have no wish to see America, becoming a leader in low-paying jobs. That doesn't make any sense to me. So tariffs could be a bit of a problem, but other than that, economically, Trump will free regulation where he can on business, which is generally considered to be a positive thing for those businesses. They like it, of course. It's not great for the environment or other things, but but he will do that. He'll reduce the tax burden on companies where he can. They already pay a low rate of tax, and some companies manage to avoid tax almost entirely. But he will make that easier. And so for investors, for example, such as me, my stocks jumped up tremendously this morning. Great positive surprise in my stock account this morning. I'd have taken the other reaction, frankly, but I own quite a bit of Tesla stock. So Elon Musk running around, dancing around like a bloody idiot around Trump, means that a lot of Trump supporters are probably now buying Tesla stock, and that's why my stock has gone through the roof. So economically, I don't think the country is going to go into a sort of an economic winter unless the implementation of actual tariffs that last a long time, that could cause us some problems. But but I don't think he'll do that. He's spoken about various tax plans in the last couple of months. Trump was running around, and as he met a new group of people, he was just promising them tax cuts. Oh, you get tips? Oh, there'll be no taxes on tips anymore. Oh, you worked overtime yesterday. Hey, tell you what, how would it be if I don't tax overtime anymore? Would you like that? And so as he's bumping into people, he was coming up with all sorts of new sort of tax plan stuff that he has no idea how he's going to pay for any of it. So it's still to be seen what he can implement. Because the Republicans should at least care about trying to balance the budget. Okay, so that's America. Let's talk about immigration. What will happen in immigration? That's really what you want to know. I know. First question, very simple question. People ask me all the time. When will Trump ban the DV lottery? Can he ban the DV lottery? Is he going to turn off the DV lottery, etc.? The simple answer to that is no, that won't happen. DV lottery is part of overall immigration law. And in order to remove the DV lottery as a part of that immigration law, they would need a new law, essentially, an immigration reform package, a package of all sorts of ideas that change the way we do immigration. Now, in all honesty, we need that. We are laboring under this sort of 30-year-old immigration law that really needs a refresh, and we need that. But I don't think we're going to get that from a Trump administration, in all honesty, because the work that it takes to create new immigration law is hard work. Not both sides have very clear. I mean, people on both sides don't have really clear policies on what they want to happen. It's very hard to get consensus and agreement on what they want to happen. And actually writing new immigration law, it would be a huge amount of law. It takes a serious bunch of individuals and a serious administration to get that done. It's the sort of thing that Obama achieved with Obamacare, ACA, in terms of the level of work it takes to get done, right? And honestly, I don't think the Trump administration have it in them. I really don't. I don't think they have the ability, frankly, to get organized enough to cause those sort of changes to happen. There will be some senators and congressmen, etc., who will suggest various things, but the process of creating whole new immigration strategies is going to be very, very difficult to do, and very difficult to get the necessary votes for. So I don't think we're going to see a new immigration law of that size that would remove DV lottery. If we did see immigration reform, it is likely that the DV lottery under a Republican president, particularly under Trump, it is likely that that would be removed. That would be one of the things sacrificed. But I don't think we're going to see that level of immigration reform. And so that's why my answer is no, it won't turn off the DV lottery. However, will it get harder for all immigrants? And particularly some immigrants from some countries? And my answer to that has to be yes. There is likely to be more barriers put in place in front of immigrants. In general, for the DV lottery and for immigration in general, we could see a slowing down of the processes, the legal processes. The Trump administration are going to be much more focused on what they call illegal immigration. They really mean asylum. And it's not illegal. But the Trump followers will want to see the southern border closed, right? They will want to see extreme measures in terms of deportations. And we will see some activities of deportation, although nothing like the scale that Trump has promised, because it's completely asinine to think you can deport 20 million people, which is what he said he's going to do. You can't deport 20 million people. To suddenly suck out 20 million people out of our economy would be extremely negatively impactful to the economy. You just can't do that. You also can't, you've got a bunch of, situations that would be very difficult to follow through on and would undoubtedly be blocked. So, for example, if a family were here undocumented, but they have had U.S. citizens' babies who are now children at some time, are you really telling me that you're going to split up that family because the U.S. citizen child has the right to be in America, whilst the parents perhaps and perhaps older siblings don't? And so are they really going to deport that? I mean, the rhetoric has been, yes, we're going to deport those people too. I don't quite believe they're going to be able to do that. Asylum processes and what happens on the southern border will be slowed down. I think, one way or the other, either by, I think there will be an increased military presence at the border. There'll be increased funding for the wall. There'll be increased military presence. There was a border bill that was sunk earlier this year by Trump. Funnily enough, he called some of his buddies and they sunk a bill. Now that bill had some improvements in there, right? Some of the good things it had in there was more asylum judges, not asylum judges, but immigration judges who handle the asylum cases, and more asylum, more immigration workers, and particularly workers that work on asylum cases. Those are important people. Right now, we've got a sort of a 6 to 8 year backlog of asylum cases. It suddenly increased. It went from 2 million to 3.5 million over a very short period of time, over about 18 months or so. I think we have about 700 immigration judges in the country. Each one of them has got 5 to 7 years worth of case at least. And so we've got sort of a 6 to 8 year backlog of asylum cases. And, the way you solve that is, one, you could sort of slow down the new applications being made, but two, you have to increase the number of immigration judges and other people involved in that asylum process to process those cases faster. And then, if you get to the point where asylum can be done in a few months or a year or something, then you can much faster get to the point where you can see if somebody has a true asylum case, and if they don't, you can send them home. Because some people are falsely claiming asylum, knowing that their case is going to take years to come together anyway. And during that time period, they'll be allowed to stay in America, they'll be allowed to work in America, pay taxes and everything else. And the money that they will earn is a huge amount of money compared to where they're from. And so they can save money, send money home, etc. Have 5 to 10 years, let's say, in America, and then eventually get deported. That's a good deal for some people, right? Some people will take that in a heartbeat. In 10 years, they could probably save enough money to help themselves and their family back in the home country forever. So a lot of people have been doing that, that has led, I'm sure, to more asylum cases, happening than can really be justified. So I think it's likely that they will try and put some measures in place that will slow down the number of asylum claims at the southern border in particular. What does that mean? Well, it probably brings up thoughts about a ban process, or perhaps more enhanced screening. So let's talk about the enhanced screening first of all. So we already know that over the last 8 years or so, since the Trump administration, we've had the DS-5535 process. That process seemed to slow down the 221G process for DV lottery candidates, particularly from certain countries. There were some embassies that used that DS-5535 process, which is like an enhanced background check. Some countries use that more than others, right? It was very common for example, Iranians. It was commonly used in Montreal, bizarrely, and in South Africa, bizarrely. I don't know why, but there were certain embassies that seemed to use that process more than other embassies. And so what we will probably see is, I would imagine, more extensive use of that process, DS-5535, or other background security screenings that will slow down the applicants from the DV lottery cases. I think that's a real possibility. Now, right now, if you're an Iranian or from certain other countries like Syria and so on, you could already face 4 or 5 months of background checking during the DV lottery process. This happens after interview and is extremely impactful, will actually take away the chance of some of the cases. And so I think we're likely to see more cases going through that system. That could mean that timeline could go longer for some people because there's just going to be more cases through the system. Will they think to increase the number of people doing that? Probably not, right? So that if they don't increase the number of people who are operating the process of DS5535, if they don't fund that administration effort, but they push more cases that way, then it's bound to make that process slower. And so we may see more people go through that enhanced screening, and we may see slower times of processing in that enhanced screening. That's a possibility, right? And that possibility will affect people in the DV lottery, and it could be outside of the couple of embassies that I mentioned. It could be more widely used in other embassies too. That's one part that I think will probably affect DV lottery. I don't think there'll be any new executive orders about that, by the way. I think that will just be a matter of internal policy passed down through the administration and passed through the system. They don't need any more rules or any more laws about that. They just need to make that happen. They just need to send a memo, basically, or some memos to say, hey, we're gonna increase the number of people that we do background screenings on, and that will do everything I just said about, right? That's all they need to do. Okay, the other thing is a ban. Now, let me show you something here. Where are we? Here. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the travel bans that were in place during the Trump presidency. It's important to understand the sort of the historical context of the travel bans that came in place. In as early as 2015, a year before the election that first put Trump into place, there was a terrorist attack in San Bernardino in California, I believe it was. I think it was that one. And in that terror attack, there was, it was sort of a Muslim terror attack, and that one, and then a later terror attack that happened in Orlando, also Islamic terrorist attack. Those two in particular gave Trump his excuse that he needed to create this sort of anti-Muslim feeling that he created during the 2016 campaign. He actually said, Donald, I'm sort of paraphrasing, but I'm pretty close on this wording. It's something like, I, Donald J. Trump, call for the complete shutdown of immigration, or of movement, not just immigration, of movement by Muslims into this country. So a complete shutdown of Muslims coming into this country. That's how he started the travel bans, right? It was clearly directed at Muslims. He talked about it coinciding with a couple of Islamic terrorism attacks, and he got widely condemned for his rhetoric around that, although he then got elected, right? So although he was widely condemned about those of us that care about his speech, a lot of people liked what he said, right? So he then went away and worked with Rudy Giuliani, and Giuliani himself has explained this process, where Trump basically came to Giuliani and said, how can I ban the Muslims? How can I construct that law to write an executive order to ban the Muslims? And Giuliani said, well, you can't really ban the Muslims, but you can ban, because that's just not right. That's not legal. You can't be so overtly banning a religious group. That would be against the law. But you could choose to ban people from certain countries. On the on the basis that those countries have had people involved in terror over the past few years or whatever, or because those countries don't cooperate with us over security screenings and that sort of thing. And that's exactly what they did. So they implemented, I mean, the first travel ban was very clumsily written. It was struck down within a few weeks of being implemented, but then they refined it in a second version and then a third version. And actually there was a fourth version sort of thing. But over a period of time, and for his whole presidency, there were various bans on people from various countries. And so if you're from those countries and perhaps from some other countries, then there is good reason to be concerned and nervous. So I thought I should at least go over the list of countries with you that were affected by those travel bans, right? So this is the list. I'm hoping you can see this. Yeah, should be able to see that. First country is Chad. Chad actually got removed from the travel ban. Ban was removed in the revision to the ban on April 10th, 2018. So Chad was for a time in the ban. I think that was for non-cooperation. Eritrea, Iran. Iran has continued to be aggressive towards America. I think it's very unlikely that they will escape any sort of, if there is a ban, it will include Iran, because the government of Iran have done themselves no favor. So they'll be included. Iraq. Iraq's an odd one. They were in the original ban in 2017. But then the prohibition was removed from the second ban in 2017. It was really odd to me that they did that. But anyway, they did that. Kyrgyzstan, fourth ban, restricted travel rights from immigrants, but not for non-immigrants. That was one of the stupid things that drove me nuts about that administration. It's like, you're restricting travel from immigrants, but not non-immigrants. You think a terrorist, if you're worried about terrorists, you think a terrorist is going to go through all the process to get an immigrant visa and wait 2 years and all the crap we go through to get an immigrant visa, rather than just getting a non-immigrant visa and coming over and doing whatever violence they want to do. Like, it made no sense. I mean, very little of what the Trump administration did made sense, but that was one of the ones that was just obviously dopey. And that was from a ban in February 21st, 2020. Libya, Myanmar, Nigeria. Nigeria is not currently in the DV lottery, of course, but worthy of note here as well. North Korea, Somalia, and Sudan and Syria. These are countries that are in the DV lottery and will be affected by any ban if they put in place a ban. Tanzania, Venezuela. The ban on Venezuelans was targeted towards certain groups. That was a bit strange, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see more of the ban go towards the South American countries that have large problems, that are sending people north, not sending, but people are moving north to get away from the problems in those countries. And I'm thinking of countries like Ecuador and Guatemala and so on. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of those countries get involved in new bans, and then Yemen, right? So, there's, if you want to read about these comments here, come to just Google travel ban or Trump travel ban or something, but just travel ban, and go to the Wikipedia page, and you can read all of those comments about how the countries that I've listed there were affected by the various versions of the ban. They weren't all banned at the same time. This was various iterations of the ban that involved, at some point or another, all of the countries I just listed. So would those countries be, become banned? It's possible. It's likely. I can't say it will happen for 100% certainty. But one of the tools that Trump might implement to try and stem the flow of immigrants at the southern border could be a generic ban like this that would stop people from certain countries coming into the country. So it wouldn't shock me tremendously if they clumsily implemented another ban simply to slow the entries at the southern border. That's why I went into sort of detail about the southern border. So yeah, that's. I'm hoping you understand that. Now let me just go back and make sure I've covered all of my topics, if you don't mind. Deportations of undocumented immigrants, that will happen, but I don't think in the numbers. The ban I've talked about. Slowing immigration, yeah, talked about that. So no cancelling of the DV lottery, but slowing of immigration processes in general that could negatively impact the lottery. Immigration reform, not likely to happen, you know, and then strengthening the border in various ways, you know, which as legal immigrants, you may have a negative view of that sort of that process anyway, right? So maybe you think that that's a good thing. You know, we could have an honest discussion about that. You know, that asylum is not something. True asylum is not something that people take on a whim. People don't walk for 2,000 miles because they're interested in getting cheaper sneakers or something. It's not for. It's not a decision taken lightly to go through that sort of hell of a journey. So, you know, hope that's sort of clear. Okay, so so there's my thoughts really about how this will impact us. I've given you quite a wide range of you know, thoughts, just sort of free form. I haven't really planned this video in any great extent. But that's just, you know, as I'm sitting thinking about it, that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. I'll have a quick scan for questions. So, you know, if you have some legitimate questions that are about the Trump administration and I haven't already answered it, then I'll look for those sort of questions, right? So let's talk about 2025. Yeah, perhaps I should be more specific about that. I mentioned right at the beginning, Trump will not be the president until January 20 of next year, right? 2025. He probably won't implement a ban or anything like that on day one. He could do, it's possible, but I'm not expecting that. So it might take some time for him to slow down procedures, and certainly policy changes of the nature I explained, like sending a memo, increasing the number of DS-5535s. I don't really expect that to take hold immediately on day one. It will probably happen over a period of months afterwards. And so I don't think DV 2025 will be dramatically affected. But if you are in a position where you're interviewing between now and January 20th and you get approved, then obviously get, you know, particularly if you're from one of the countries that is possible to get a ban, get your ass into America, because I should have pointed out, if you are a green card holder and you're from one of these countries, then you will be exempted, because that's what happened in previous bans. You'll be exempted from the action, right? So if you're already a green card holder, you've already entered the USA, you're going to be exempted, I would have thought, from any action that Trump will take. But so, you know, it is important to follow the rule of getting to the airport as quickly as you can after you get approved. Don't wait to see what happens, right? What will happen about TPS, slightly outside of my area of interest. I think between now and January 20th, the Biden administration might do what it can to try and shore up some of those things, but I don't know for sure what will happen. I think in general, Americans don't understand TPS, and so they will probably try and remove it where they can for some of those groups, right? It's a possibility. Angie, I just talked about a sudden ban. I just talked about that, so I suggest you go back and look at the last 20 minutes or so of this video, right? Let's see. This might be a positive message for us to read. Jean says, I got my DV during Trump's first term and nothing changed. He threatened to ban it and never did because big businesses that need immigrants vote for Trump, sort of, yeah. Legal immigrants do better under Republican. Not really, but okay. Fine. I'll leave it right there. I'm EU 8500. I fear it will be tricky. I'm from Switzerland, though it should be okay, right? But, look, come on, let's. Trump is not banning people, white people from Switzerland. He's not banning those people, for goodness sake. It's kind of a, it's kind of a sort of an unfortunate thing, or fortunate, depending on how you look at it. Firstly, your number at 8,500, Elena, you've got nothing to worry about. You're from Europe. You got nothing to worry about. Did you see any country on the list that was, a mainly white, mainly Christian country in Europe? No, that's not Trump's concern, of course, right? So there is a sort of an odd thing that could happen when if Trump bans certain countries, particularly in Africa, like Somalia, Sudan, even Syria, some of the Asian countries as well, Egypt. Why isn't Egypt on there? That's a good point. Why isn't Egypt on that list? That's weird. They were in one of the bans, weren't they? I thought they were, but I could be wrong. But or it could be Wikipedia is wrong. I don't know. Anyway, if certain groups of people from within a region are banned or slowed down, then it will be positive for higher case numbers in that same region, and could even be positive for other cases in other regions. So Europe, in general, wouldn't be impacted by bans, although he might have a problem with some of the STAN countries or Turkey. He might have concerns in that way, but he's very friendly with some of those people. So maybe he won't make things worse, right? But in general, Europe's not really going to have a problem. Africa could have a problem. Asia could have a problem. Oceania won't have a problem, right? And South America might have a problem for some of the countries. All right, so you have to understand. You have to think like a racist in order to understand how the administration will operate. So yeah, Elena, you're not going to have a problem there in Switzerland. It's almost funny that you're asking, almost, sort of. Okay, so yeah. I've been stressing, yeah, unnecessarily. Dear. I mean, it's like, I've got a nervous laugh right now, so I apologize for those of you that are very worried about your situation, because it's totally understandable. And if I sort of nervously laugh about Elena asking her question, I don't mean disrespectful response to Elena, or even talking about these racial things in any disrespectful way. It's just that it's a fact of life, so we've got to address it. Let's see. What about naturalization in the coming years? Can you take that away? Not really. I don't think there's going to be any plan that would take away naturalization. There is a suggestion that he's going to take away birthright citizenship. I don't think that's going to happen. To me, that's something I'm assuming, and I would defer to one of the lawyers. But I think that's something that would take immigration reform to do, and therefore it won't happen. I don't think he can pass an executive order that will take away birthright citizenship, right? But that's not really what you're asking for, Ashman. You're asking about naturalization, and no, I don't think that will be affected. That's not been discussed in any way. So it still is, if you're a green card holder and you've lived here 5 years, you're eligible to apply for naturalization. So I don't think that will be a problem, and I don't think green card holders will be affected. It's really people before that. It's getting the immigrant visa that will be harder. Perhaps entering the country, that might be harder. So yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad you took it the right way, Elena. So yeah, I promise I'm smart. Okay, so what happens? What happens to DV20 winners who didn't have a visa before the travel ban happened? DV 2020 is finished. It's over. There's no possible way that you could be helped, and certainly with the Trump administration, that's certainly not going to be a possibility. So yeah. I'm afraid 2020 is over. Now, I answered the question, will DV 2025 be affected? So let's take Martha's question. Will DV 2026 be affected? No, I don't think it will be either. I think it might suffer slower processing, but he won't stop the process. The process is already in place, right? The entries are happening. By the way, for those of you that haven't entered DV 2026, you have about 24 hours left. Okay, about almost exactly 24 hours left to enter. So please do go ahead and enter. Even if you're a DV 2025 winner, just go ahead and enter DV 2026. Doesn't cost you anything, and you have 24 hours left to do it. Don't go through any agencies or friendly people at the local internet cafe. Don't give anyone else your data. Focus on having a good photo and follow the freaking rules, right? Just answer the questions correctly and properly, and don't try and be a smarty pants. If you're married, say you're married, right? If you've got kids, you must include them. If you've got a spouse, you must include the spouse. Don't try and be clever with the country of birth or chargeability. Don't try and be clever with that. It's based on your country of birth. Okay, so 24 hours left. Go ahead and apply. Do you think Congress replaces DV lottery with merit-based immigration? I had a whole conversation about that where I talked about immigration reform. That would be something that if there were true immigration reform, where they wrote a whole new immigration law, which would cover every aspect and adjust all of the allocations between family-based and employment-based and all the types of immigration we have. If they rewrote all of that, then DV lottery could be a victim of that process, and its visas could be handed to something more focused towards skills, as you call it, merit-based, right? That could happen. But will immigration reform happen? No, I don't think so. I don't think the Trump presidency is the administration to do anything that is that impactful. They just didn't do very much. I mean, think of all the things that Trump promised, right? He promised to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. In the end, they built about 50 miles of wall. The border is 2,000 miles long. And Trump's buddies managed to build 50 new miles of wall, and then they repaired a bunch of wall, like 400 miles of wall. And the wall is like freaking useless anyway. I mean, it doesn't. If the wall is on the other side of a river and the border is in the middle of the river, then you get over the river, you land on the other side, and you're in America already. Therefore, you have rights to claim asylum and so on. And so, having a wall another 100 meters inside America makes no freaking difference to anyone. It's like dopey as hell. But anyway, so he said he was going to build a wall and Mexico would pay for it. He didn't build the wall and Mexico didn't pay a dime. He said he was going to replace Obamacare. He didn't, and never did it. And even now, asked in interviews or in debates recently, he says he has concepts of a plan. So 9 years later, and this man only has concepts of a plan of replacing healthcare. I mean, it's a joke. Another joke was Infrastructure Week. He was always going to get around to it. It was always going to be next week, 2 weeks. We've got a beautiful plan. It's going to be this big. And it never came. And so he doesn't do stuff. He doesn't implement stuff. He doesn't get stuff done. And so I think that sort of incompetence will continue. So there you go. I don't think they will therefore be able to introduce merit-based immigration. Okay. Let's see. There's a question here. Do I think Hungarian applicants will have a better chance now with Trump? As you know, our Prime Minister is in a much better relationship with him compared to the current Democratic Party. It's another funny one, really, because number one, the process of the lottery isn't dependent on, you know, buddy systems and that sort of thing. So, you know, it's not sort of based on that. Also, I bet if you ask Trump to name the Prime Minister of Hungary, he wouldn't know the Prime Minister of Hungary from Adam. He had no idea. It may appear to you that that the Prime Minister of Hungary has a special relationship with Trump. Trump has a special relationship with McDonald's burgers. That's about it. If you mention Hungary, he's going to say, yes, I'll have a large fries. He's not going to know you're talking about the country of Hungary. So so no, I don't think that's going to be very helpful. At least certainly not in the DV lottery context. And I can't think of any other way. But you feel free to believe what you want to believe, right? Don't have to listen to me. And by the way, I should have said right at the beginning of this, all of this is my speculation. I could absolutely be wrong about many things I've said in this video. None of these things are guaranteed to be right. It's just we're trying to predict the unpredictable. I'm just talking to you about things that I think might happen, right? So I could be wrong, and I could certainly wrong. Maybe your prime minister is a special buddy of Donald Trump. I don't know. Okay. Do you think the mandatory COVID vaccination for green card will go away under Trump? Oh my God. I think I'm just going to ignore that. Am I going to ignore that? I don't know. I don't know. Trump, according to Trump, it's not true, but according to Trump created the vaccine, right? He put in place Operation Warp Speed during the COVID virus, right? Operation Warp Speed had nothing to do with the development of the vaccine that was actually happening in other countries. In fact, people in other countries were being vaccinated before we were. Americans don't understand that. But Germans, when Trump was standing up in March of 2020 saying things like, "Oh, don't worry, I got it under control. There's 12 people on a ship that have got COVID, but don't worry, that will go to zero soon, and it'll all be lovely, and it'll be the most beautiful thing. You watch." A million people in America then died, so that didn't work out so well. But one of the good things, I suppose you could say, is that the administration at the time said, let's invest in Operation Warp Speed, which gave a huge amount of money so that people in other countries were investing in the development of a vaccine, and that sort of helped. Now, Trump then undermined the mask policy, the various of his own policies. He undermined his own policies, including the vaccine. And so there's actually documentary proof that people in America, in red states, died in higher numbers because they didn't get vaccinated, listened to Trump and his undermining of the thing. Presumably they were injecting bleach or shining lights through their big toes or something. So there were more people who died in the red states than died in the blue states, in proportionally. There are loads of people who believe that Trump was anti-vaccine and didn't want his people to have it, etc. He got the vaccine himself, and all of the elites got it, and a lot of people who listened to Trump didn't. From your question, Peter, you probably think that it's not a good idea to get us vaccinated. I violently disagree with you, but you're welcome to your opinions. But the CDC ultimately decide what's necessary, and I'm not sure that Trump will really get involved in that. So I don't think it will change, not immediately. I don't know. We'll see. Oh no, we will have Kennedy, won't we? Oh my God! Like the realities of everything, all the wacky stuff that's about to happen, is just like amazing. Trump did a little deal with Robert F. Kennedy, and Kennedy is anti-vaccination, and supposedly Trump's going to give Kennedy a position of power in deciding these things. So yes, Peter, maybe you'll get your dream, and the COVID vaccine will be not required anymore. Who knows? I don't know. Like, everything's too wacky. Okay, I'm a naturalized British. Quick question. I'm a naturalized British citizen born in Bangladesh. Can I apply for DV? Not based on your naturalization in the UK. No, it's not based on your passport. It's based on your place of birth. So no. Let me look for another question. It is true. Hello, EBM. Someone says that if your confirmation has 10 numbers and 6 letters, you're automatically a winner. Oh my God. I mean, I know EBM. I don't think he's saying something as stupid as that, is he? Is he really? I've heard this rumor before. It comes up every year. But it is the dumbest thing I've heard anyone say. And I can't believe EBM said that. Did he say that? I'd love to know. Because it's the dumbest thing that someone could say. Unbelievable. It doesn't work like that. I hope EBM didn't say that, because that would just be embarrassing, really. If he said that, he's completely wrong, right? Anyone who says that is completely wrong. It doesn't work like that. Right. Most like Trump. No. Okay, I think I've got up to. Yeah, I've got up to the latest question, so I'm in pretty good shape, I think, in terms of the video. Right. So, quick recap. Don't panic. Everything will be okay. The country's not going to suddenly turn into a ball of flames because Trump's in the presidency for 4 years. I'm sad about it, as I mentioned at the beginning. I think it's unnecessary to give that. And there's going to be lots of awful, wacky realizations over the coming days of what this will actually mean. But a lot of our worst fears won't come true, right? We will, there will be Democrats in tears today, I'm sure. I've already spoken to some of them. And some people are going to be truly, truly sad through this. And they'll be extremely worried, right? And most of those things are not a problem. But for your DV lottery people, some of you could be impacted by this new administration. And for that and for what is about to happen in that respect, I do deeply apologize on behalf of America. We're better than that as a country. I hope we don't do those awful things, and I hope I'm wrong in a lot of the assumptions I'm making. But I suspect that Trump will have to give meat to the hordes that are asking for stuff. There's going to be so many things that he has promised that he won't deliver on, and so things that he can quite easily deliver on, like a ban. I think he's probably going to do some of those things. So, buckle up. Fingers crossed. Let's get through the next 4 years, and I hope that it doesn't affect many of you. And I will be here to answer your questions and help you through as best as I can. I actually am not going to be negatively impacted at all. I do have a 16-year-old daughter. I'm worried for her, but she's 16, and she lives in California, and so we're not really going to have a problem for her. If we lived in Kentucky or Alabama or something, I would be much more worried for her. but I'm not worried because she'll be fine, right? And if necessary, we'll move. You know, it would never get that bad for me. But understand that my situation in California, the sort of the Democratic elites, as the Trump party likes to call them, the economy of California by itself is the world's fifth largest economy, right? And New York is incredibly powerful financially. And so in the past, a lot of the political leadership has come from those East and West Coast areas, California, and in fact, California, Oregon, Washington. A lot of the political leadership has come from there, and a lot from New York. And certainly a lot of the money that supports America and pays all these stupid red states. Literally, we give money, like California gives a ton of money to these idiotic red states. They can't make money by themselves, right? So we support all that. But at least for now, at least for the next few years, the political influence from the East Coast and the West Coast will be diminished. And so the people in the middle are going to be more likely to pass some of their legislation that they want to do, So we need to sort of just practice some little phrases and get used to it, So under his eye is something that you'll probably want to learn to say. Maybe there'll be a change of wardrobe for my wife shortly. I'll get her a nice outfit. I just saw this one. EBM is such an expert in DV lottery with more than 10 years, can't say such a thing. Expert in DV lottery. Okay. All right. Maybe he's been talking about it for 10 years, but yeah, I would be very surprised if he said such a thing, I have to say. It would be incredible to me that he would say that. Okay, so Elena says, when's the next stream? When January numbers are out? Well, no, live stream, my live stream. I do live streams at the weekend, usually Saturday or Sunday morning. I'm based in California, so it's later in areas like Switzerland, Elena. I used to hang around. I used to work in Switzerland, by the way. Worked in Geneva. So I tend to do a live session most weekends, and I then tend to publish another video or two midweek on various topics for DV lottery. I focus on DV lottery. I don't normally get political, but I'm a outspoken person, so what can I do? All right. Anyway, good luck, everybody. Please, if you haven't entered the lottery, once again, please do enter. America is still a cool place to live, and there's still a bunch of opportunity here. There's still a ton of open land. We're still a very, very fortunate country, and we generally, at least as of now, we have freedoms. Things might change, but I think we'll the Republican Party typically do care about freedom as much as any American that I can think of, right? So they're not really trying to take away people's freedoms. They've just got a different perspective on life, and are able to suppress some of the moral compass aspects that most human beings have, to be able to. I think the word is cognitive dissonance. They're able to suppress some feelings and some feelings that they should have, whilst at the same time being nice people in other respects. I don't know how they do it. I couldn't do it, but they're able to do it, and they're pretty successful at it apparently, because as we've just seen. All right, everybody. Oh, hang on. I just saw this last question from a fellow Brit, so I've got to ask this one. I don't think it's. When they talk about uniforms, they're typically talking about military uniforms. They don't want you to take your pictures in military uniforms. School uniform, It's not perfect, I have to say. If you submit, I'm yet to submit, I would retake that photo, just because why risk it, right? But normally a uniform in the UK is just a little blazer. You can almost not tell the difference between between that and everyday clothes, right? It could just be a sort of a young kid that likes wearing a blazer. Who knows? But if it's an obvious uniform, if it's got military overtones or anything like that, then yeah, retake the photo. All right, everybody. Okay. Thanks for joining me today. Sorry I rambled on a bit, but good luck to everybody, and please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thanks, and bye-bye.